Decisions with this process, but it starts right at home. It starts right at home with state government. One of the best metaphors I could talk about today's presentation was when the governor was Attorney General. He came to Rochester, and he did a presentation on a scam in the healthcare industry and health insurance industry. I remember sitting in the audience and watching the governor go through this elaborate process, how it worked, a process that those on the outside did not know had happened. Those on the inside did realize what was going on. And what, in essence, it did was create a process that set false rates, that really set up a system where people paid more for their health care than they should. And the best way to describe it was a scam. What the governor has done with this budget process, I mentioned before, is put a light on the room, is looking at a system that built in double-digit increases each year is unconscionable. There's not a mayor, a county executive, a town supervisor, anyone in this state that builds in double-digit increases to their budget. And for people that are out there who we serve, who are making $25,000 or $30,000 per year, who are trying to pay their mortgage payments and put food on the table, they don't get double-digit increases in their pay. They don't get double-digit increases in their Social Security checks. And today, a process starts that stops it right here in state government. And I think it's one thing that I would like to reinforce. I am proud to serve with a governor who has the courage to stand up and put a stake in the ground with this budget process and start something new. And for all of the pain that we'll talk about and all the pain you'll hear, I have to just perhaps frame the message differently. This is not about pain. This is about a new day in the state. This is about starting a process to get New York State back on a comeback trail, to get this state working again, to get all of us here who are elected doing our jobs that people in the state have elected us to do, and get New York State back on the path for recovery. And that's what this is all about. It's all about starting today. And one thing that I would ask for everybody in the room, we need your support. This governor needs your support. This governor needs everybody to pull together at this time. This state is looking for leadership at all levels with this budget to step in and to pass a budget that does not raise taxes, pass a budget that gets us back on the path for fiscal health and fiscal reform, and it starts right here. And I just would like to close by saying that when you look at the situation that we're in today, it did not happen overnight. And the only way New York State is going to go from number 50 to number 1 is for people to have the courage. And we have a governor who has shown the courage to lead. This is the beginning of New York State's comeback. This is the time when all of us should say this. We are sick of hearing about dysfunction in state government. We're sick about hearing all the things that are wrong. What we need is a leader and leaders to get us back on the path. We have a governor who's doing that with this budget process. We need everybody to also be on board, help get this state back on the path. And each year will get better and better. So we appreciate you coming. I would like to bring up a person that I know, as budget directors go, the most unpopular person in any government is the budget director. And it's a person that may not be known well by face around the state, but has done a great job serving this state. Please welcome the New York State Budget Director, Bob Megna.
It is true. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I try to keep my picture really out of any kind of publication. I'm excited to be here today to join with Governor Cuomo and Lieutenant Governor Duffy in presenting the 2011-12 executive budget. I really have to relay this to the folks in the audience. I think you'll understand it. About 4 weeks ago, to the day, the governor called me upstairs and asked for a budget briefing. To give you a sense of what that briefing was like, I still haven't shoveled my driveway. In fact, I haven't left the Capitol. But here's the important point. Neither is he. And he has been focused in a singular fashion on the budget and its implications for all New Yorkers. I've worked with a lot of other governors, and I spent more time with this governor in the past 4 weeks going over the numbers and, importantly, the concepts than any other governor that I've spent time with. And the concepts is the key part. I know I speak for all the dedicated professionals at the Division of the Budget to say that we are thrilled to have a governor that has so deeply focused on the budget and how it impacts every New Yorker. We budget geeks are happy because we have a governor so focused on the budget. This governor understands that this is not just about numbers. It's not a numbers game. It's about concepts. It's about where we are today fiscally and where we're going to be in the future fiscally. And this is a budget that for the first time in many years, and again, I've worked on a lot of budgets, both in the current position and in prior positions, that not only looks at the current year and how we solve the current year's problems, but to take a unique and I think fundamentally important different view of how we view our fiscal situation over the long term. He understands, I think, the way we have constructed our budgets over time has caused New York, like so many other states nationwide, to fall deeper into an unsustainable pattern of increasing taxes and unsustainable spending and debt. And I think we all know that that's the situation we've fallen into in New York, given the current economic cycle. But I can tell you this budget is different. This is a transformational budget that stops the cycle of relentless and unaffordable spending growth. And it changes the way we do business in very fundamental ways. This budget shifts our focus from solving just a one-year problem to addressing our multi-year fiscal situation. And as a lifelong budget professional, I can tell you that is what we need at this moment, at this critical juncture when states are suffering fiscal deficits. This is a critical point for solving our long-term problems, not just our one-year problem. And this budget goes very far in that direction. I look forward to working with him more on these fundamental decisions on how we solve not only the current year problem, but our extended problem, and how we enact these innovative and important initiatives. But really hearing from me, as I've experienced over the last 4 weeks of intense conversations with the governor, is not what's really important. What's really important now is hearing from him. So without further ado, the governor of the state of New York, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. First, Bob Megna. We did have a lot of quality time preparing the budget. We do have a lot of snow to shovel. It was not a pleasant process going through the budget preparation. I'm sure it wasn't pleasant for Bob, but it wasn't pleasant for me. During the weeks that we were doing the budget, I was also suffering from a root canal. So periodically I would go to the dentist office for a dental procedure as a welcome relief from going through the budget. I was very few times in your life that can happen, but it actually happened here. Let's give Bob Megna and the entire team at the Division of Budget a big round of applause. They worked tremendously hard. They are a hard-working group of professionals, and really the people of the state of New York owe them a big thanks. Lieutenant Governor Bob Duffy, who's been doing a great job. Let's give him a round of applause. Pleasure to be with him. They were recognized, but please allow me to do it again. Controller Thomas DiNapoli, pleasure to be with the Controller. The Attorney General is en route. Is he here? Attorney Generals tend to be tardy. Did you ever notice that? I can tell you that firsthand. The people also owe the Controller and the Attorney General a big round of applause because they were very cooperative in this budget and they really done their share to step up to the plate. Thank you. Tom, thank you very much. Majority Leader Dean Skillos, pleasure to be with you. Speaker Sheldon Silver, pleasure to be with you. Senator Don Friesen and Senator John DeFrancisco, pleasure to be with you, sir, and Assemblyman Denny Farrell, good to be with you both. Thank you. I recently got a picture from Denny, it's a picture of Denny and myself and my father from the 70s. I must be 20-something years old. Denny had hair that didn't go up, but it went out. Denny's hair was around. I have the picture in my office. It is available for viewing. $1 per viewing. We can do half the deficit when you see how this picture is going to take off. Pleasure to be with you. And all the members of the legislature and concerned staff, thank you very much for being here today. We're here to obviously talk about the 2011-12 executive budget, New York at a crossroads, and we're laying out today what I believe is a road to recovery for the state. This is a different type of budget presentation, as you heard from Bob Megna. This is more a management presentation. This is not just about the numbers. It's about the values, it's about the choices, it's about the cycle that we're now in that must be changed. Where are we? You know where we are. New York State is functionally bankrupt. I like to use that term because when you think bankruptcy, you think in terms of restructuring. And that's where we are as a state. We have to think in terms of restructuring because the state doesn't work on the numbers anymore. We spend too much money, which is not new, but it's worse. 74% increase over the past 10 years in spending. And when you look at what we spend more than we make, which is never a good formula in life. Over the past 10 years, spending averaged 5.7%. We were only bringing in 3.8% in tax receipts. So we were spending more money than we were making as a state. We were spending more money than we were making as people. Personal income was growing at 3.7%. And both far outstripped inflation, which was at 2.4%. The spending rates, which are dictated by current law, permanent law, are unsustainable for the state of New York. We have a $10 billion deficit this year. What's worse, we have a $15 billion deficit next year written into law. $17 billion deficit the year after, $21 billion deficit the year after that. Well, maybe we spend a lot of money, but we get great product for it. We really get our money's worth. If only it were true. Number 1 in education, number 34 in results, number 1 in spending in Medicaid, number 21 in results, $1.6 billion in economic development, number 50 in terms of result. Government spends too much money, and it produces too little for the people. High cost of government makes us economically uncompetitive. You look at the tax situation of New York, which you know very well, 66% above the U.S. average, the worst among states. Property taxes, $3,700, medium New York property tax bill, 96% higher than the U.S. average. Where does that lead us? We spend too much, we get too little, and it makes us economically uncompetitive. That's it in a line, and it's not a pretty line. This situation has gone on for too long. The time to redesign government is long overdue, recalibrate spending is long overdue, and rebuilding the economy is long overdue. This budget is about transforming our government around a new set of values that face today's economic reality. Our government will reduce costs, reward performance, and put people first. And remember, all of these government programs, they are about students, they are about patients, they are about taxpayers. It's not about the industry of government. It's not about the bureaucracy of the programs. Government is supposed to serve people. That's what this was about. And that's what we have to get back to. This will be about fostering private sector growth and commit to reality-based budgeting, stopping the Albany budget cycle that sets us up to fail year after year after year. Budget highlights, let's talk about Medicaid first. In terms of redesign, as you know, we spoke about it in the State of the State. We have a Medicaid redesign task force which is working extraordinarily well. Their purpose is to redesign the programs. How do you take these programs, produce better services for the people, and reduce the cost to the taxpayer? The redesigned task force will assume the governor's budget goal that is in this presentation. They've already had over 1,000 ideas collected as they've been going through the state. So for example, what are they going to do? The home health care program, which is a program I know very well, I investigated it as Attorney General. It's also one of the fastest growing Medicaid programs in the law. From 2003 to 2009, almost a 90% increase in the benefits that go to a recipient. 90%. $1 of Medicaid money first goes to what's called a Certified Home Health Agency, a CHA, they call it. The CHA then takes 26 cents for administrative overhead and contracts with a licensed home care service agency called Alexa, which takes 26 cents of overhead, and then contracts with the actual caregiver, who is the person who's going to go into the home to provide the care, who gets 48 cents. When you redesign the programs, find ways to reduce cost and find ways to take the fat out of the system. The Medicaid system was not supposed to be spending more than 50 cents on the dollar for overhead. Medicaid is not about supporting the home health care industry. It really isn't. It was about getting care to a person. 48 cents goes to the caregiver, to the person. Redesign it, find out how to do away with the 52, save money for the taxpayer, and actually get better services for the person. This is a snapshot, but you can do this over and over and over and over again all throughout the Medicaid program. I want to thank the Redesign Task Force, which is taking a lot of time, is a bunch of great professionals, and they're doing a great piece of work, and I would like to thank them for it. This year's Medicaid budget. Last year, state spending on Medicaid was about $14 billion. It will go up to $18 billion. Federal funding was 31. It's going to go down to 26. Local spending will stay about the same. The total will go from a $53 billion program and change to a $52 billion program. The state spending on Medicaid is going up approximately $3.6 billion. The federal money in Medicaid is going down about $5 billion. And this is an important point because this is all through the budget. One of the main drivers in this budget is that New York State got about $6 billion of federal funds last year in terms of stimulus, and we inhaled it, and we injected it into our body, and it is now gone. And we have a withdrawal from the federal stimulus money. So that $6 billion that was put into the system and then withdrawn is what we're trying to make up in this budget. But state spending goes up $3.6 billion. Year to year, Medicaid is down $928 million year to year. Year to year, the $982 million cut is a 2% cut to the program, okay? Now, to put the program in perspective, the growth of Medicaid is about 6.4% on average over a 10-year period compared to inflation, which has been 2.3%. When you add in this -2, the 2% reduction, the 11-year growth rate of Medicaid is 5.7, still double the rate of inflation. When you use reality-based budgeting, as opposed to Albany-based budgeting, which is where Albany meets Enron, in our opinion, the Albany budgets institutionally assume an exorbitant growth rate that is disconnected from fiscal reality. And this has been going on for many, many years. Permanent law institutionalizes unsustainable spending and growth. What is the Medicaid rate of growth in the current budget passed last year? Maybe it's the rate of inflation, maybe it's CPI, maybe it's 4, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 6. No, 13.2% projected growth in Medicaid. That's what the budget passed last year said, that the Medicaid program was going to grow 13%. That's what it informed all the mayors. That's what it informed the county executives. That's what it informed all the groups. How anyone expected to be able to pay for a 13% increase in Medicaid is beyond me. But that's what we said we were going to do, and that's what brings us here today. Permanent law has built-in rates and formulas that continually drive up this unsustainable spending. If the economy was running great guns, this would not be an issue. When the economy was running great guns, it wasn't an issue. Spend more, spend more, spend more. The economy was running. In a down economy, this is a death spiral. And that's where we are now. Permanent law rates for Medicaid increases over the past 2 years, 16% last year, 14% the year before. Future years, 13% and 9%. Nothing, my friends, is increasing by this amount. Not home values, not salaries, not inflation, not income, not anything. It truly is an unsustainable amount. More egregious, in my opinion, the formulas don't even call for performance for the people. There are no outcome measures. There are no performance measures. It doesn't say we're going to pay for programs that are doing well in terms of preventable hospital readmissions or wellness or quality care. It's just more money. It has no factors to promote government people actually serving people better. It is in many ways a special interest protection program. Also, the way the budget is structured, I believe it misleads the public. In Albany, a budget cut is defined as anything less than the anticipated growth. So if you don't get the 13% increase, that's a cut. If you only get a 10% increase, that's a cut of 3%. By that calculus, Medicaid was cut, the 13% increase, and an additional 2% because it's -2. By that language, Albany language, it's a $2.8 billion cut. Year to year, as I told you, the cut is $982 million, which is 2% decrease. The deficit then is the difference between state revenue and what you need to pay the 13% increase. That's the deficit. So we have a $10 billion deficit. Yes, that's the amount you need to fund Medicaid at education and to fund the other state increases. If you assumed the deficit was the difference between state revenue and the rate of inflation, to pick an objective, nationally recognized standard, the deficit would have only been $1 billion. It is the cycle of passing these unsustainable increases that set us up to fail year after year. Growth in Medicaid will be recalibrated to a fair and objective standard. Why? Because we need to do two things this year. We need to close this year's deficit, the $10 billion deficit, and we need to stop next year's deficit from forming by changing the permanent law. If we have to go through this, and we have to go through this difficult period, let's make sure it's the last time we do it. And let's not go through all the pain we're going to go through this year and then set up a process that only guarantees that we're going to go through it again next year. That's what the Albany budget dance has been year after year. And when the lieutenant governor talks about stopping the dance, that's what he's talking about. The new formula for Medicaid, for example, should be the National Healthcare CPI, which is currently 4%. The days of unsustainable spending must end. The days of money without performance for the people must end. The days of Albany being dominated by special interests must end. Education. Let's change our thinking, putting people first. Think in terms of students, graduation, achievement. Progress for people should be included in the funding. We have two competitive incentive grants. One $250 million grant program for the school districts that have the greatest improvement in student achievement. If it's about the students and not funding a bureaucracy, and if you want the students to do better, why don't you fund increases in performance and student achievement? If you're trying to say to schools, do a better job teaching, incentivize those schools that do. Change the culture. Let school districts know, those school districts that want to excel, those individuals who want to excel, you want to get an award, you want to go to a ceremony, you want to be recognized by your peers, this is how you do it. Change the orientation of the program. You don't just sit there and I'll send you a check and I'll send you a check and I'll send you a check. You actually have to do something for the money. And we reward achievement. That's the culture that we're in. We also propose a $250 million grant for school districts who have the best management efficiencies and bring down costs, innovative ideas to do that. Education funding this year, it will go from $19.8 billion to $19.6 billion in the fiscal year. So it'll be a reduction of $246 million. In the school year, it will go from $20.9 billion to $19.3 billion, which is a reduction of $1.5 billion. Total spending was $52.9 billion on education. The $1.5 billion reduction state aid represents 7% of state aid. But when you combine it with the local funding, it represents, on average, a 2.9% net cut to the district. Okay? What will that mean? We believe there's a combination of local management and redesign operations that can handle this situation and that there will be absolutely no need for layoffs. For example, number one, school districts have $1.2 billion in reserves. School districts have $600 million left over from last year federal funding that they didn't spend. That's $1.8 billion right there. Our entire cut this year is 1.5. So just reserves and unspent money. School districts would have a way to pay for the money. Maybe they look at their administrator compensation. When I was AG, we did many cases in this area. Highest paid school superintendent makes $386,000. I applied for that job. I failed. I ran for governor. But this is what irks me, because I could have been a school superintendent. 279 school superintendents, more than 40% receive salaries and benefits totaling $200,000 or higher. I understand school superintendents have to manage situations, manage a lot of people. I understand that they sometimes have to manage budgets, and sometimes the budgets are difficult. But why they get paid more than the governor of the state, I really don't understand. More than 2,000 school administrators receive at least $150,000 in salaries and benefits. If it's about the students, then let's find savings within the bureaucracy. Also, there are many of these school systems that have a lot of work that they can do cleaning up their own house. We did double-dipping cases. We did pension reform cases in many school districts. If there was a wage freeze for management and teachers, that would amount to $1.1 billion. Again, our cut is $1.5 billion. We will have a wage freeze for state workers this year, as you know. If teachers and management took a wage freeze, in and of itself, that would come very close to managing this cut. If there was flexibility on their health care contributions, 90% of new school employees pay less than state employees for family coverage. If school districts require the same employee contract as state employees, it would be about $600 million. Fifth, consolidations and shared services, 676 school districts, over 200 have fewer than 1,000 pupils. We've been talking about consolidation for a long time. Now is the time to do it. On school aid, like Medicaid, we're going to have to recalibrate the rate of growth. What is the rate of growth in education in the current budget? Is it 4%, 5%, 6%, 13.1? Medicaid was 13.2. What does the current law say the increase will be going forward? 13 and 11. Again, by Albany budgeting, a cut is defined as anything less than growth. Education was projected to go up 13%. This is a cut. This will be, by that language, a $2.8 billion cut. The 2.8 is then part of the $10 billion deficit, which was to fund the 13% increase. Going forward, to stop the cycle, we propose that education have an index, be indexed to something like the personal income growth, which would be 4% per year. We also in education have to make sure we fulfill our commitment to high needs districts, which have been historically not adequately funded. If you do not change the projected growth in Medicaid and education in next year's budget, not this year, next year's budget, we have a $15 billion gap. By current law, the growth for the entire state budget is 12% next year. 12%. That's the law as written. Says 12% more expenditures. There is no way this state's economy is going to grow to cover 12%. Unless you know something I don't know, or there's a secret pot of money somewhere. It's not going to work to have a budget that says next year's growth is going to go up 12%. We're not going to have the revenues. That's why we're going to have a $15 billion deficit. And again, this year, let's resolve this problem, and let's resolve next year's problem. State operations, we're very aggressive on reorganization. That is Governor Al Smith. His portrait now hangs in the Red Room. As I mentioned in the State of the State, we have a state operations team called SAGE, which is working on novel efficiencies and consolidations. In the budget, we have a proposal that consolidates 11 state entities into 4. The new entities will be grouped by area. We also believe there's savings in the area of correctional facilities. The population, the census has declined 21% since 1999, which is about 14,000 people. In the budget, we have a prison consolidation implementation plan. We are not talking about releasing prisoners. We are talking about consolidating prisons and unused space, not releasing anyone. You have many prison facilities with high levels of occupancy, vacancy. We want to consolidate the prisons and save money. We have assumed 3,500 beds that need to be closed. We will appoint a task force with the executive and the legislative to make the determinations as to which prisons where. We hope to have those decisions done one way or the other 30 days after the budget is approved. Every day you don't make the decisions and you're not going forward, obviously, is a day that you don't have savings. I think it's fair and right that the legislature be part of it. There are political consequences to these determinations, I understand that, and I think it's right that the legislature be part of making the determination. I also think it's right that we say to the communities that are going to deal with the loss of a prison, we understand your situation and your problem, and a community that is going to deal with the loss of a prison will receive a $10 million economic transformation program grant and help from ESDC to find an alternative use for that prison, another business, etc. Same in the juvenile justice system. Population has dropped way down from 2006, 1,300 to 604 today. We want to reduce the system capacity by more than 30%, invest in locally based alternatives, and increase state funding to do it. Once again, we would provide a $10 million economic transformation program for each community that's impacted by a facility closing. State operations, which will have $1.4 billion total in savings, $100 million from right sizing, SUNY efficiencies, $115 million with no tuition increases in SUNY. I am pleased to be able to say CUNY efficiencies, SUNY hospital efficiencies, non-personal service, $485 million, labor management partnership workforce savings, $450 million. We will work very, very hard to find these savings by working in partnership with labor. All my life, I've experienced a good relationship with labor and with the workforce. We're going to work very hard and be very creative in finding their best ideas to find these savings. The last resort and the least favorite options of all of this would be layoffs, which if we had to get the $450 million through layoffs, it would be 9,800 layoffs. I've already started conversations with Ken Brynan from PEF and Danny Donahue from CSEA. Local government, once again, incentivize performance. We're going to have a $75 million fund to spur consolidations. 10,500 governments have to be reduced. The aid to municipalities program, AIM program, will be reduced by 2%. When you see the totality of what we're looking at in this situation, 2% is obviously a modest reduction. The upstate cities are very important to us. We understand the situation they're in. We call this the Jerry Jennings Protection Program. And we're sure he is grateful. New York City will take a proportionate cut. Obviously, we will work in partnership with Mayor Bloomberg to cooperate wherever possible. But make no mistake, my friends, on these numbers, New York City is not an inexpensive place. New York State is not an inexpensive place to live or to operate. We are not going to be able to cut our way out of this long term because the costs are expensive. Medicaid is expensive. Education is expensive. We are an expensive state. we're going to have to grow our way out. The economic development agenda is the most important agenda that this state will concentrate on going forward. It is where I'm going to be spending the lion's share of my time. We need jobs. We need revenue. That's the way this is actually going to work. We have a short-term strategy to stabilize the financial ship of state by reducing the costs, stopping this cycle of never-ending deficits. But long-term, it's jobs, 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 and getting businesses here and getting businesses to stay and getting the revenue up. We'll take the economic development programs that are now scattered across a number of agencies. They're all going to be funneled through regional development councils, which will be higher ed driven, public-private sector partnerships. There'll be a single point of contact for all agencies in the area. The Lieutenant Governor will be chairing those commissions. Budget recap. State operating funds last year were $87 billion. They were projected in the budget to grow by 11%. That would have taken us to $96 billion. That was the 10-year deficit that we've been talking about. Our proposal goes to $88 billion, which is a 1% increase in the state operating funds. On an all-funds basis, which primarily adds in the federal funds, it was 136. Last year's budget proposed a 5% increase to 143, 132 billion. From 136, all funds spending is down 2.7%. Again, annual state spending goes up $899 million, which is roughly 1%. Annual all-fund spending will go down by 3.7%. State spending goes up because of the loss of federal funds, which I mentioned earlier, which is what put the major hole in this budget. The federal dollars literally fell off a cliff, and you can see those numbers: 1.3, 2.9, 5.2, 1.1. Fairness was very important in this budget to us. We spent a lot of time on allocating the loss. Medicaid year to year is 2%. School aid year to year is 2.9%. Aid to municipalities, 2%. State agency cuts, 10%. Cuts to the Comptroller's Office of the State of New York, 10%. Cuts to the Attorney General's Office of the State of New York, 10%. Only the Office of Court Administration did not participate in finding reductions, and we will negatively comment on their budget when we submit it. But I once again want to applaud the Comptroller and applaud the Attorney General for stepping up to the plate and for doing their share. It was important to us that we could say to local governments and school districts all across the state, I understand that you have a cut, and I understand that you're going to have to deal with a 2% reduction. But we believe in leading by example, and the state's cut is 5 times, roughly, the cut anyone else out there is taking. And I'm proud of that. If we do this, we will have made dramatic progress. A fair budget, an inclusive process, the Medicaid Redesign Task Force, the mandate task forces, they're all over the state. It respects the taxpayers, it protects the vulnerable. It will begin a government redesign that focuses once again on serving the people and reminding government that these programs and this whole elaborate bureaucracy and the reason all of you are here and I'm here is it was about the people. It was about the people. It wasn't about the providers and the institutions. It's about serving the people. We will have stopped unsustainable spending in 2 ways: closed this year's deficit and stopped next year's deficit from happening. Both are musts this year. We will have commenced real economic growth with a real economic development program, and we will have repositioned New York nationally to grow again. And I believe this is the long-term future of New York. Letting business take a second look at this state and saying, you know what? Maybe New York isn't so bad. Maybe New York gets it. Maybe New York is turned around. Maybe they're not the anti-business state. We need this to work desperately. We're at a crossroads and there are two roads. I believe if we continue doing what we're doing, the state goes down the road to ruin. I think we also have an opportunity to take the road of recovery. It is a time when we're sending out an SOS to save our state. And it is up to you. And let me say this in closing. I know this is going to be hard. First of all, change is hard. I love the concept of change. Everybody's in favor of change. You ask people, do we need change? Yes, we need change. Ask people in a relationship, ask people, husband and wife, do we need change? Oh, yes. We need a lot of change. That's right, everybody agrees. We need a lot of change. What they really mean is you need to change. They're doing pretty well where they are. You are the problem, and you really need to change, and you need to understand that. They like control, and they want to stay just the way they are. But everybody thinks they like change. When change actually comes to them, it's shocking, and it's frightening, and it's anxiety-producing. And that's where we are today. This is change. The situation is forcing and mandating change. We don't want to change. That's why we've never changed. That's why we're doing the same thing. I understand. But it can't go on because it's unsustainable. You could do this when the economy was running and you were making a lot of money and the money was coming in hand over fist. You were spending it, fine. But the money's gone. And the money's not coming in. And this cycle of inflated increases, 14%, 16%, 12%, there's no such number in economic reality. It's not going to happen. $10 billion deficit, $15 billion deficit. It's not going to happen. We have to change. Now, this is hard. This is real change. We're saying to the school districts out there, this is a real net 2.9% change. And they're going to have to find economies of scale, and they're going to have to adjust. And I can sit here and stand here and say to you, but they've gotten a lot of money over the years. The bureaucracy has grown up. Here are ways to find the savings. They could reduce health benefits. They could reduce wages. They could consolidate. But it's still hard. I can say on the Medicaid cut, it's only 2%. Go talk to families. Go talk to businesses across the state. 99% of them would make a deal with you today. Just give me a 2% cut. Because in their lives, it's been far worse. But for the Medicaid companies, the 2% is going to be hard. I get that. You're going to hear it. You're going to feel it. This is going to inflame the Albany establishment. The lobbyists are going to be running around the hallways like the hair is on fire. You're going to hear it. And they are going to be unhappy, and they're going to be all over you, and they're going to be complaining. And I understand that that is hard to take. I also understand this. The people get it. And the people are with you. And at the end of the day, it's about the people. And at the end of the day, it's not about this town, and it's not about this building. It's about the people in your districts. It's about the people who elected you. And they get this. They get this because they're living it in their own lives. And they get what these numbers mean. 12% increase, 13% increase. They get it. And they get the options. And they ran the numbers, and they ran the calculus, and they readjusted their own lives. And they're saying to government, now you readjust your life. You go through the same calculus with taxpayer money that I went through with my personal money. The upside is, the opportunity is, you can change the trajectory of this state this year. You can do more good for this state in this session than has been done in decades. You can not just right the wrongs. You can take us to a place we haven't been. You have to pass 2 bills. 2 bills. I want more, but you really only need to pass 2 bills. You pass ethics reform. Why? To restore your credibility and restore your integrity and say to the people of this state they can trust this body called the legislature once again. That's what ethics reform is really all about. Restore the credibility and integrity of the New York State legislature. Number 2, pass the budget. Pass the budget. Pass it on time. Pass it like responsible elected leaders. Pass it without it getting ugly. Pass it even though it's hard. Pass it even though the lobbyists are beating you up. Pass it even though it's difficult. And say to the people of the state, we stepped up. $10 billion deficit, it was difficult, we did it. And we've done more good for this state in this session than is done in the past 20 years. Give people that hope. Give people that affirmation. They desperately want to hear it from you. They desperately want to hear it. They don't want to hear more problems, more dysfunction. They believe in this state. They're here. They're with us. They're paying taxes. They want to know it's going to be okay. They want to know that there's a future. They want to know that you can function. They want to know that we can work together. They need to hear it. And they're on the edge. And we can make all that difference this year. I put out my hand in partnership to every member of the legislature. Assembly, Senate, majority, minority, anyone who will work with me, I will work with. Democrat, Republican, Independent, Liberal, Conservative, it doesn't matter. We're New Yorkers first. And this is about serving the people of New York first. And that's why I'm here. At the end of the day, they elect us to lead. Let's lead. And let's do it together. Thank you and God bless you.